People start joining. How's the approach? Hello, everyone. I'm excited to welcome you to an insightful session focused on recording purchases in Acumatica, which is the second webinar of our webinar series called Discover Acumatica Bookkeeping with 247 Digitize. I am Mazhar Ali, Director of Business Development at 247 Digitize, having a background in sales, strategy, and operational excellence. I am an MBA from Kensington College of Business in London. On the organizing team today, I have Archana and Sam with me. Archana is the head of bookkeeping services at 247 Digitize. Archana comes with over 18 years of experience in handling finance and accounts across industries like construction, education, alcobev, and automobiles. She is a CPA from CPA Australia and a chartered accountant from ICA India. Sam, who is the head of marketing at 247 Digitize, is the technical expert behind this webinar. Thank you, Sam. Sam has over 15 years of experience in marketing, both traditional and digital. He has worked with companies in many different sectors such as retail, banking, insurance, media, entertainment, and more. Sam is an MBA from Isan Postgraduate University in Peru and has also been a professor in one of the most prestigious universities in Peru. Today in this webinar, we will discuss the following areas about 247 Digitize, the importance of procure-to-pay accounts payable, best practices on P2P processes. 247 Digitize is an exclusive provider of Acumatica bookkeeping services, committed to empowering businesses with streamlined financial processes. With a team that has accounting experience and expertise, we have emerged as a go-to partner for companies seeking effective and efficient Acumatica bookkeeping support. Over to you, Archana.
Thank you, Mazhar, for that introduction, and thanks, Sam, for the technical support on this webinar. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the second webinar of the Discover Acumatica Bookkeeping with 24/7 Digitize series. One of the primary goals of a business, be it trading or manufacturing, is to capture purchases and thereby also record inventory accurately. And linked to this process is the procure-to-pay cycle, otherwise known as P2P, which will be covered in today's webinar. We will be looking at some key areas such as creation of warehouses, stock and non-stock items, in details about vendors, and then finally the procure-to-pay process, or otherwise known as the P2P process. In the first slide, we will be seeing how to create a warehouse in Acumatica. Before that, let us look at the steps in the procure-to-pay process. In any organization, we have a logical sequence in the procure-to-pay process, which basically starts with identifying the needs. A requisition is created. There is an approval mechanism for this requisition. If the organization follows the purchase order system, a PO is created, approved, the goods are received, the supplier performance is checked as to whether the correct quality, the correct quantity has been delivered at the agreed price. The invoice is approved and then finally paid. So in one of the first steps, like I mentioned earlier, we are going to now look at the first step, which is creation of a warehouse. Acumatica, I think, is a very logical ERP and one of the better features that we've seen as bookkeepers is having warehouses. Now, in case your business has only a single location in terms of a warehouse, you will have the warehouse ID mentioned as main. However, if you're a business has multiple buildings, storage rooms, or other facilities for storing inventory items, you can create multiple warehouses in Acumatica to process and track your inventory appropriately. Now, under the functionality related to multiple warehouses, uh, first of all, on the enable disable features form, you will have to enable the multiple warehouses feature. And because of that, the following functionalities become available. One is the warehouse specific settings that you can specify for stock items. Two, the warehouse specific vendor and sale prices can be mentioned. And three, you can do your inventory transfers. Under warehouse specific settings for stock items, if the setting for a specific inventory item differs between warehouses, you can specify the separate details at each warehouse on the item warehouse details. When it comes to inventory transfers, there are two types. One is the single step inventory transfer and the two step inventory transfer. How are both different from each other? A single step inventory transfer means that you can shift inventory from location A to location B within the same warehouse. So that's called a single step inventory transfer in Acumatica. Whereas two step inventory transfers refers to movement of inventory between warehouses. Let's now look at creating a warehouse in Acumatica. Excuse me, please. On the inventory menu in Acumatica, please select the warehouse form, add a new record. In the summary area, please ensure that you specify the warehouse ID and do specify an ID or description that everyone can relate to. Please mention the branch, which is a mandated field. Check the checkbox that says active if this is a warehouse that is going to be transacting in your business, and please do add the description. In the location table of the locations tab, please add the new record and specify the location ID, the description, and save your records. In the receiving location box in the same tab, please select the created location. The system will use this to purchase and also receive inventory by default. On the GL accounts tab, please specify all the needed accounts. On the address tab, do give the necessary details and save your record. Next, we will look at adding an inventory account. Now that you've created your warehouse, in the next slide, we will look at adding the inventory account for your warehouse. In Acumatica, from the Finance tab, please select the chart of accounts and select the plus button that's on the summary area of the screen. Add a new GL. So when adding a new GL, the first setting that needs to be specified is the GL code. When using a GL code, please follow the nomenclature that has already been followed, or if you're using or setting up your chart of accounts newly in Acumatica, please use the cadence that has been already used in setting up your other GL codes. Next would be to specify the account class and followed by the type. Obviously, inventory is going to be an asset item. Please do check the active checkbox. Allocate a description and do select the control account module checkbox. What happens when you select the control account module in Acumatica is that it will ensure that no manual entry is allowed. And also in the next part of our screen, as you can see, allow manual entry can be unchecked so that there are no unauthorized manual entries on the control account module. Also look at the post options, the cash accounts, and then save your inventory account. So now you've created an account that will be specified as an inventory account for a specific warehouse. That will be the asset account that will maintain or capture all the inventory at that specified warehouse. Moving on, let's look at the inventory entities to be created. In Acumatica, there are various settings that are available when we create inventory entities. The first of which is called a posting class. So, posting class is nothing but a group of settings that provide the default values for the purchase, sale, and inventory transactions for an item, and it also defines how the transactions will be posted to your general ledger. One of the default values is the source of the GL or the general ledger accounts that you have to use for that item. And you can also specify the warehouse, which will be the source or the default source for the GL accounts for an inventory item. The next will be to have create the posting classes. How do you create posting classes? So on the inventory module, please select the posting classes form, add a new record, specify the necessary details in your summary area, the general tab, and ensure that all the mandatory GL accounts are specified, like, for example, the inventory, the sales account, the cost of goods account, um, the purchase price variance or the cost variance accounts, and save your record. In the next part, we will also look at the availability calculation rules. So, on the availability calculation rules slide, Sam, you can move a slide forward. Thanks. So, on the availability calculation rules in Acumatica, you can configure the way you define how much of inventory is shown as available in accordance with your company's policies. For each item class, on the item classes form, you need to specify the availability calculation rule, which will define how much of inventory will be shown as available for billing. Please remember that individual stock items cannot have certain specified settings. It can only be specified for an item class. So to create an availability calculation rule on the inventory menu, please select the availability calculation rules form, add a new record and specify the settings. Please select the required check boxes for the availability calculation. So as you can see on the right side of your screen, you can specify per your company policy whether you would like inventory to be deducted only at the time of issue, or you would like it to be deducted as soon as it is shipped or allocated, so on and so forth. Or in terms of inward recognition of inventory for availability of a specific item, would you like it to be increased as soon as it is received, or any other condition, for example, when there is a PO receipt, or only when the purchase order is prepared? Moving on, we will next look at creation of stock item classes. Now, in Acumatica ERP, you can create item classes to group stock items and non-stock items with similar properties, which we think is an amazing feature. And this allows you to also provide default settings for new items. The system fills in many values, and thus it saves user time and increases accuracy of the entered data. Now, please remember, some of these default values can be overridden for individual items if needed. The item class is a required setting for a stock item. Now, when you create an item class, please select from the inventory menu in Acumatica, go to preferences, select item classes, and add a new record, which is represented by the plus button on the summary area of your screen. Please specify the details in the summary area. Most importantly, please do specify the item type, the tax category, and the unit of measure. In the unit of measure, please do keep in mind and specify the mandatory fields, which are the base unit, the selling unit, and the purchase units. And also, please ensure that if the units of measurement are different for the purchase and different for sales, like for instance, if you're purchasing your inventory in boxes but are selling in pieces, please ensure that you fill in the area that specifies the conversion factors as well. Click save and you would have created your item classes. Next, let us look at stock items. Stock items in Acumatica are of three types: finished goods, component parts, and sub-assemblies. So on the stock item form, you can either have a finished good, which is the type of goods that you sell to customers. It could be a component part, which you use for uh, producing finished goods and is an intermediate component, which will complete your finished goods during the kit assembly. Or it could be something that you use this as a sub-assembly product. While creating stock items on the inventory menu in Acumatica, please select the stock item option and add a new record. Specify the settings, mainly focusing on the inventory ID. Move the item status to active, add the description. Do remember to specify the item class. So this will ensure that every time you look at the item class, you will have the related list of inventory stock items grouped under it for reference. Please ensure that the correct tax category is selected and the posting class as well. Uh, just like we specified in the item class settings, please ensure that the sale unit and the purchase units are also entered without fail, which is obviously a mandatory field as seen on your screen. It is marked with an asterisk. If there is a conversion factor, again, between sale and purchases, in terms of the units of measurement, please make sure that the conversion factor is also entered on this form. Click save, and also before that, please do check and specify the GL account settings as well. Click save on your screen and you would have created your stock item. The next, and I think one of the most important and one of our favorite features as a bookkeeping team at 24/7 are non-stock items. So in this slide, we are going to look at how we create non-stock items. Non-stock items may be products that consist of no physical entity, and more often they are such. They can also be physical entities for which you think there is no need of a tracking system in your warehouse. Now, the type of non-stock items can be labor, can be service fees, can be a charge, and it could also be an expense. So for each non-stock item, you can select or clear the require receipt for non-stock items when creating a purchase order. This can be done on the general tab of the non-stock items form. We're also going to look at um, the posting accounts for the non-stock item lines. So when an inventory receipt linked to the purchase receipt is released, what happens with a non-stock item is that the expense account that you have specified on the GL settings is debited, and the purchase accrual or the PO accrual account is credited for the same amount. Once the AP bill is entered, what happens is that the PO accrual account is debited for the line amount and the accounts payable account is credited for the same amount. The rules for closing and completing non-stock items are it depends on the completion rule that we specify in the close PO line box on the non-stock items form. So the system then will determine if a line item of the non-stock type should be closed and completed either by specifying the quantity or by amount. Next, let us look at how you can create a non-stock item. So on the inventory module in Acumatica, please select the non-stock items form and click add a new record. In the summary area, please specify the inventory ID, the posting class, the tax category, and then the units of measure. If your base unit, sale unit, and purchase units are the same, it's great. But if there is going to be a conversion factor between sale and purchases, please do remember, just like in our stock items, let's ensure that the conversion factor is also specified in this form. Highlighted in red on the left side of your screen, you can see whether you need to check requires receipt or you don't want it to be specified. Then please make sure that you uncheck this box and save your record. Moving on, we will next look at vendors. So in Acumatica ERP, after setting up your warehouse, specifying the inventory items, creating your posting classes, specifying the stock items, the non-stock items where applicable, the next step would be to configure your vendor accounts. Vendor accounts in Acumatica are as detailed as is possible, and we think this is an amazing tool where all necessary information is captured in one place. So each vendor account in Acumatica holds all vendor related information that you need to conduct business with. So this information includes addresses, locations, contact details, payment settings if you would like to automate payments through Acumatica, as well as the financial settings, purchase settings, and then the mailing settings as well. So this provides you with different tools to ease the process of entering vendor data and also helps you to organize this data as reports. When creating a vendor account, please select from the purchase module vendors and then add a new record. Specify the vendor ID. Make sure that the status is active if it's a new vendor and you're going to be transacting with them. Select the vendor class. So under vendor classes, by default in Acumatica, all vendors or customers have a default class. Should there be a need, you can also add various classes, which we will look at in the subsequent sections of this webinar. So please select the vendor classes. The next step will be to also specify the contact information and address. Please specify the account information, the primary contact, and the account address on the general tab. On the financial and payment settings, on the financial tab, please specify the terms of payment, whether it is net 30, due on receipt, payable in 15 days, etc. On the payment tab, please specify the payment method, the cash account, any lead time, or if you would like to pay bills separately. On the default GL accounts, on the GL accounts tab, please specify the necessary GL accounts and save the record you would have created your vendor account. Moving on, as we just covered, let's look at creating vendor classes. In the next slide, if you see, a vendor class will group vendors that have similar characteristics. So vendor classes can be based on the type of goods or services that you procure from vendors, or it could be based on the physical nature of the product, could be based on geography, payment methods, currency. It's all open to you to create vendor classes for ease of use for your business and management. So to create a vendor class on the payables menu of Acumatica, Please select the vendor classes form and add a new record. In the summary area, please specify the required settings, which is primarily the class ID with which you will identify what type of vendors will be listed under this vendor class. In the description area, please make sure that the class ID and the description are in sync with each other to eliminate any confusion. Moving on the summary area, please specify the required settings. In the general tab, specify the default general settings and specify the necessary GLs to save this. We will now look at setting up credit terms. Credit terms are what are the payment terms that are offered to you as a business and agreed upon mutually by your vendors and you. In Acumatica, you can set up various credit terms which will be used primarily to automatically calculate the due date of the invoice and the date on which your cash discount eligibility ends. So you can define the credit terms for payments also as whether you would like to have payments as a single installment or in multiple installments. So to define the credit terms and create them in Acumatica, from the payables menu, please select the credit terms form, add a new record, specify the settings like the terms ID. So if it is 30 days or net 30 as it is popularly known as, please specify 30D or any other suitable term that all of you in your AP section of the business or management are able to identify with. Do add the relevant description. And in the installment section, please specify whether you would like the payments to go out as a single installment or not, and click Save. Moving on, we will now look at vendor prices. So, vendor price lists in Acumatica can be specified differently at different points in time. So, by maintaining vendor price lists in your system, it doesn't require you to have only one regular vendor price list. It can be a promotional list, or it could be volume specific, or it could be warehouse specific. So the different vendor price types are regular vendor prices, which are the most basic type of vendor prices that is available or specified or set up in Acumatica. Promotional vendor prices, as the name suggests, that if your vendor uses promotions, these prices are temporary and may not be applicable for all your inventory items. So such prices are valid only for a specified date or a specified period, and they automatically can be set to expire after the expiration date. Unit specific vendor prices is that when you create a price record, you can also specify the unit of measurement to which the price is applicable. So when the unit of measurement changes or a new unit of measurement is introduced into your business, then it requires a new vendor price record to be created. Volume dependent vendor prices are available in Acumatica only if on the enable and disable features form, the volume pricing feature is selected. Only then can you enter information about a specific vendor's price tiers by using the vendor prices form. You can specify the tiers by breaking down the quantity, a price, and the date until which the price should be in effect. Vendor specific prices can also be specific to a warehouse. So if you have the multiple warehouse feature enabled on the enable disable form, this definition is also possible in Acumatica. So if a warehouse specific price is not mentioned, then a standard price will apply to all the warehouses that has been configured. On the right side of your screen, you can also see how Acumatica will search for the applicable or the best possible applicable price in terms of search priority from the highest to lowest and stop searching when it finds an applicable price. So the system first will look to see if an item has a promotional price defined, if it is specific to a warehouse or not, or any unit of measurement specific price. If not, it will move on and look at the regular pricing and see whether it is specific to warehouses or to a base unit of measure. And last but not the least, it will also look at the last vendor price, the last cost for the warehouse, and if not, at the last cost. We will now look at the procure to pay or the P2P process in Acumatica. In the next section, we will look at the first step, which is creation of a purchase order. To create a purchase order in Acumatica, please select the purchases menu. From there, select transactions and go to the purchase order form and add a new record. In the summary area, if you see on the extreme left side of your screen, there is a drop down box which says type. So purchase orders can be of the following types in Acumatica. It could be normal, which is the default selection. It could be a drop shipment. It could be a project related drop shipment. It could be a blanket purchase order and a standard purchase order. Please remember that if you do not select anything by default, it will be shown as a normal purchase order. Please enter the vendor name, the date, the day, month, and year, and the description. As bookkeepers, we've often seen that descriptions are left blank. Please make sure that descriptions are added whether in your purchase orders, purchase bills, because these records, once released, do not allow you to edit them. And having an appropriate description is always great for referencing back after months or years of entry. In the details tab, please add a row, specify the branch, the inventory ID, the warehouse, the quantity that you have ordered, and the unit cost. Please save this record, remove, hold. What will happen is then the green button that you can see on your screen, which says enter PO receipt, which is nothing but the purchase receipt, will be then enabled. In the next part of our slide, you will look at how to create the purchase receipt. So once you click the enter PO receipt, the purchase receipt form will open up on your screen. In the summary area, please check the create bill checkbox, select and save, remove hold, and then release this transaction. After releasing the purchase receipt, in the next slide, we will look at the bills and adjustment form. So once you receive the goods, it is time to enter the purchase bill. On the bills and adjustments form, open up the bill of the created purchase receipt. Please check the details and ensure that the quantity, the value, or the unit cost, and the value of the purchase bill received from the vendor matches the purchase order that was created for the AP bill in Acumatica. Please remember that if a discount was offered or if there is a variance between the time in the price, between the time that the purchase order was created and the time the supplier gave you the goods or supplied the goods via the AP bill, the differential will be parked to the GL code that has been specified as the purchase price variance account on the face of your P&L. Acumatica has this wonderful feature where you can attach the AP invoice received from the supplier on the bills and adjustments form. So to do this, please click Files on the right side of your screen, select Browse, upload the uh, file or the invoice received from your supplier, click Upload, save your record, and then you will see that the button that says Pay is enabled. In the next part of this webinar, we will see how you can process purchases with billing before your goods are received. As a business, sometimes the procure to pay process either needs to be bypassed at some stage purely for practical reasons or in case of emergencies. So you can also process a bill received for the purchase of goods before the vendor ships the ordered goods and it needs to be paid. How do you do this in Acumatica? So first up, you could specify the vendor settings. So in the vendor account on the purchase settings tab, please note that there is an area under the receipt actions menu where there is a checkbox that says allow AP bill before receipt. So only if this checkbox is enabled, you will be able to enter the AP bill before processing the purchase order on purchase receipt. Next would be to create the purchase order. So once you create the purchase order, on the purchase order form, you can add a new row, fill in the summary area, the type, the vendor, the description. On the details tab, please give the details of the branch, the inventory ID, the warehouse, order quantity, and the unit cost. On the other tab, notice that the allow AP bill before receipt checkbox is selected. You can remove, hold, and release this transaction. On the next slide, you will also be looking at how we can enter the accounts payable bill. Now, on the purchase order form, if you can see in the More menu or the three buttons that are visible on the left side of your screen, please select Enter AP Bill. The Bills and Adjustments form will open up. You can review the details, remove, hold, and release this transaction. Since we have bypassed the process of requiring a purchase receipt before a bill and adjustment could be recorded, the next step and the final step to close this process would be to process the purchase receipt. So on the purchase order form, please go to the PO history tab. You can review the bill details and enter the purchase order or the PO receipt. Now, on the purchase receipt form, once it opens up, you can see that the status is balanced. You can save the transaction. On the billing tab, you can see that the bill has been created. Make sure that the create bill checkbox is cleared and release the transaction. The last step would be to process the payment. On the next slide, we will see how to do the checks and payments. Sam, you could move one slide further, please. A slide more. Thank you. So on the checks and payments form, you can print and process the payment. So on the process payments form, you can see that the dialog box opens. Select the unlabeled checkbox for the bill. process all, and then you will see that the processing dialog box opens, and close it once it is processed. In the next part of this webinar, we will look at processing purchase returns at calculated cost. Now, the process of returning the purchased goods to a vendor could be for any reason, and how do you capture this? So, on the purchase receipt form, you can open up the purchase receipt that was created. On the Details tab, please select the Unlabeled checkbox of the stock and click Return. Now, the system will automatically create a purchase return that corresponds to the purchase receipt with the return type and opens it on the same form. When specifying the settings of the return on the purchase receipt form, you can review the date, the cost of inventory return from, and the cost by issue strategy. Select the Create Bill checkbox. On the Details tab, you can change the receipt or the return quantity, clear the Open PO line checkbox. You can release the purchase return. On the purchase receipt form, select Release, and on the Billing tab, you can review the debit adjustment, which will show you an open status. On the other tab, you can check the issue form, which will open up, review the inventory issue, and see that the review status would be released. On the Orders tab, you can check that the PO history will also be cleared. In the last part of this webinar, we will be moving on and looking at prepayments. Prepayments in layman terms is also called an advance payment. So this is typically a case when customers pay their vendors before we receive the goods. So how do you specify a prepayment or create a prepayment in Acumatica for a vendor? Sam, you could move on to the next slide. Thank you. So when a vendor account is created in the vendor form, on the Payments tab, as is visible on your screen, you can specify the prepayment percentage. If you would like a limit on how much could be prepaid to a vendor, or simply put, how much of an advance can you be giving to a vendor. On the GL Accounts tab, please select the prepayment account as well and then save your record. On the stock item form, in the Vendors tab, also select the active checkbox in the vendor ID column. The next step would be to create a purchase order. So on the purchase order form, you can create a purchase order and remove hold. On the More menu, Sam, we could move on to the next slide. Thank you. So as you can see on your screen, on the purchase order form, in the More menu, there is a option that says Create a Prepayment Request. When you click that, the bills and adjustment forms will open with the type saying prepayment. You can specify the columns on the Details tab, like the cost, the account that the GL account that needs to be affected, remove hold, and release. You can pay or apply this prepayment, and the checks and payments form will open. Now, once you review the summary area where you will see the type, the vendor, the payment method, the cash account has to be selected carefully, the payment amount, and the description. On the Documents to Apply tab, please specify the document type, the reference number, and the amount paid. You can remove hold and save. The next step will be processing the check. So on the checks and payments screen, you can print or process your payments, click process and close. The last step will be processing the AP bill where there has been a prepayment done. So on the purchase order form, please select the prepaid PO. On that, the more menu, enter AP bill option. It will open up the bills and adjustments form. You can review the prepaid bill, remove, hold and release, and you can see that the bill will move to the open status. You can also process the purchase receipt. On the purchase order form, there is an option where it says enter the PO receipt. The purchase receipt form will open. You can clear create bill checkbox and then release this transaction. This brings us to the end of our procure to pay cycle and this webinar on purchases. I would like to thank Sam and Mazhar for putting this webinar together, and my team at 24/7 Digitize who have helped with this content. I am just the presenting face here today on the webinar, so kudos to my team here and those who have worked hard offline. Back to you, Mazhar. Thank you.
Thank you, Archana, for sharing valuable insights with us. Your presentation was both informative and engaging. Your expertise and insights have certainly enriched our understanding of recording purchases in Acumatica. Now, my message to our audience is that if you or your customers are interested in outsourcing Acumatica bookkeeping, please do get in touch with me. You may make a note or take a screenshot of my contact details from the screen. Let's discuss how we can streamline your bookkeeping processes and meet your goals. Looking forward to connecting. Thank you all for being a part of today's webinar. We look forward to see you at the next one on 25th of October 2023, which is a Wednesday as well. The topics that we will be discussing on our third webinar will be drop shipment, warehouses, kit assembly, stock and non-stock items. So stay tuned to our LinkedIn page for more updates. We appreciate your participation. If you have any further questions or feedback, please reach out. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Thank you again.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you all very much.